Alright guys, welcome back to another Nifty Network video. Today we're going to be removing this manual transmission out of this 350Z. So, we got some work to do. Let's do it. We already took off the battery lead, the positive for the battery, and then we're getting under the car, and let's see here. Alright, so first things first, we're going to put our 11 on this clamp right here, and we're just going to loosen that enough to where that slides off that way. And then we're going to grab one of my most favorite tools. This is a hanger removal tool. If you've taken hangers off, you know how hard this is normally, but you just put your thing up there, give it a squeeze, and it slides right off. Like that. Then you don't have to cut your hangers. Alright, so this is an aftermarket exhaust. Normally there's a big muffler right here, and you see this hanger right here? There's normally one here, and there's normally one here. You remove the hangers the same way. There's a flange here that has two 14s on it, and it'll come off basically just like that. Alright, so now that we got the muffler off, we can move to the front. Well, normally this would be a 14 if somebody installed this correctly, but let's see if it's a 17. Yeah, whoever did this, wow, did you see how loose all that was? And if you're going to install this on your car, make sure that your clamps are all tight and right. Not like this guy. This isn't even a 17, and I was able to get these bolts undone. So basically, if you notice that this is all moving around, and I haven't even loosened any of this yet, that's just how it was left. That's going to cause exhaust leaks, and you're going to sound like a boat, and it's not healthy for the motor. Alright, so now that we have that flange off in the center, we can take my favorite tool again. And this thing's about to fall out as it is. And there you go. The center section is out. Now we'll work our way to the front. These are 14s. Alright, so now we got all 4 of those off. We're just going to slide it straight back off those studs. Alright, now that we got the exhaust out of the way, we can work on the drive shaft and make sure it's in neutral. Before you do that, we're going to grab a 17 chrome socket. We're going to put a wobbly on it, and then we're going to put an impact on it. And I know everyone is going to just grill me and say that a chrome socket is not supposed to go on an impact, but let me tell you, the chrome socket is the only one that will fit in there. Then we're going to get our wobbly in there, the lefty loosey, blast those out. And just like that, the drive shaft is out. Oh, we also pulled off the shifter for inside the car. We pulled the shift knob off, and now it's time to start pulling other stuff off. We got the exhaust off and the drive shaft out. Now I'm going to take this off, and the reason that I'm taking this off is because we're going to take the W brace off. The W brace just, it opens up more room for you. Oh, a little side note, if you are putting your car on jack stands or a lift, and you plan on taking the trans out and the W brace out, make sure when you put the lift on, like when you put the car on the lift, that you're missing these 2 bolts right here. Because if you rack the car and then you put that on there, you're gonna have to waste time by moving that, basically. So we'll pull these out. Alright, so now we're going to grab the last 2 of the 19s right here. And the W brace is kind of heavy, so don't be alarmed when it comes flying down. I wouldn't say it's heavy. It's just very awkward. Every way you hold it, it wants to rotate on you. So I found it easiest to do all the 14s and then do one 19 and then kind of brace yourself when you're doing the other 19. Now we are going to pull off the cat brackets. Those are 14s. We'll start at this one right here. Okay, the cat bracket is off. And then since I have a 14 in my hand and we're under the car, I'm just going to do these two harness bolts and then the O2 sensor bracket. Now I'm going to grab a 12 and I'm going to remove the slave cylinder. That is right here. So there's two bolts that go into the trans and it sandwiches with this plate, and this is your slave cylinder. So this can kind of just hang there, just don't hit your head on it. And then I like to just pull this sensor out for when you're putting, and then you don't lose it. So slide that sensor out of there and then just put this 10 back in there. It's a specific 10, that's why I don't just put it in the pile. I'll unplug this stuff. And then to release those O2 sensor clips, you're just going to press on that tab in there, and then it'll come sliding off. So it slides off of there, and then unhook it from there. This side will be a little easier since it's not up in the air. And that slides in there like that. Don't lose this because then your O2 sensors will drag on the ground. Alright, and then you're going to grab a number 10 Allen head to drain the manual transmission. Get that up high. Oh, don't get it to leak all over your gun like I did, that's for sure. That was a newbie move right there. It's okay. When you buy quality parts, it can have a little oil get on them. That's really clean fluid. So the trans is all drained now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo these 10s and 14s on the bottom half of the bell housing. Start off with this 10 here. So 110 holds that on. Now we're going to grab our ratcheting 14 wrench and break these loose. And these are just in a weird spot to where it's easier just to do it with your fingers than a ratcheting wrench, and it's not big enough to put a socket in there, so you're just gonna have to do that by hand. Then we're gonna come over here, and this is your starter. We're gonna undo these two for the starter, and since we disconnected the power cable off the battery, we don't have to be that concerned about the starter grounding out on anything or shorting out on anything. So the starter takes two 14s. And you could put a socket on these, but I have a wrench in my hand, so that's why I'm doing it this way. And then on the last one for the starter, you might have to wiggle the starter around. It always tends to bind up. Just hang in there. Okay, so once that's off, we can loosen the starter up and we can unplug this plug. And if you're just doing a trans drop, you can just spin this starter to where the lead is forward, and then it'll actually sit right there on the rack. And then you're gonna see a 17 hidden up here. That 17 right here that I'm touching with my finger, that is hidden from the starter. So when you take the starter out, you're gonna see that. I always just like to do that one right now, just to get it out of the way. Because if you get all the bell housing bolts off and you're trying to drop the trans and you can't figure out why the trans is not coming off, it's kind of frustrating. It's happened to me, not in a long time, but yeah. So we'll break that loose. That's a 17. And also this 17 is a little bit shorter than the rest of the bell housing bolts. Get that starter out of the way. So this is the length on the short one. When I get the long one out, I'll put them next to each other so you guys can reference that. So there's 2 more 14s on this side. Okay, so now we got that. This is just basically a dust cover. And actually, this is a dust cover for a USDM DE. In Japan, the steering shaft is not going to be on the left side, so your starter is actually going to be right here. And you would have a dust cover on the right side. I can't even say passenger, because if we're switching spots where the steering wheel's at, then that kind of messes it up. So on the left side of the car, the dust cover will go over here for a USDM model. If it's right-hand drive, it'll have a dust cover on the right side because the starter is on the left side. So this is my transmission jack. I'm not gonna put it on the transmission yet. I'm just gonna get it here ready, because I'm about to pull the transmission brace off so that the motor in the trans is gonna tilt backwards. Yeah, and if you are at home and you're on the ground, obviously there's going to be a height difference. You can also use a jack, like just a normal floor jack. I've done it before. Well, I'll put the floor jack right here, and it's actually pretty balanced when you put it right there. I mean, it's going to want to roll because you're holding it on a piece, like a circle that's a ½ inch around, and the transmission is heavy and awkward. So yeah, you can do this. If you're on jack stands, get the jack stands as high as you can possibly get them, while still being safe, and then get to where we are now, and we'll drop this down. There is a potential that some fluid could leak out of the back of the housing here, even though we already drained it. And then yeah, when you're at that point, you'll be able to access the upper bell housing bolts way easier, and the starter. Unplugging this starter over here is a pain without dropping this down. It is safe to drop this down. It kind of looks weird because you see the transmission just hanging down there. So it's not going to fall on you. I just like to be safe. Rolling. All right, so now we got our trans jack sitting here just in case. Start pulling these down. And when I'm pulling these out, I like to put a little pressure on the trans, just so when that last bolt comes out, it's not pulling the threads out of the chassis. All right, so we're actually going to take this brace off back here just to get the motor to come down more, or to get the transmission to come down more. Okay, so now we are going to take off the harness off of the trans. I like to try to save as many of these factory clips as possible. So if there's an option to either remove a bracket or take off a clip, I'm gonna remove the bracket, because bolts are reusable, and finding clips like that are, I wouldn't say harder, but I definitely can find bolts easier than that. Okay, so we'll get this out. That's freed up. Now we're gonna get the This sensor back here, which is also in a very fun spot to press down on. I'm gonna need a flathead for it. So you're gonna have to kind of wiggle this in here. I'll show you when it's out what I had to do. Okay, so the sensor plugs in just like this, but I forget the actual name of what this bolt does, but it basically, if you have a really sloppy shifter, it's because these are blown out. There's a spring in there with a ball, and it controls how much wiggle your shifter has side to side. So that's what that does. There's one on each side. This sensor just so happens to be in front of it, and it's plugged in like that, so it's really hard to press the clip. Just go from the top side and press down like that, and you'll be able to remove that. And same thing right here. Push that sensor, release that down, then we're going to undo that 10. I need a shorty. And then I'm just going to remove this. You don't have to. So, I mean, if you're replacing your transmission because yours is bad, then obviously take this off, keep them out. And then if you're just doing a clutch, you don't have to. But since we are filming and we're trying to get you guys the best views, that's why we're removing that. And it only takes a second. And earlier, I don't know if he's going to put this in the video, but I said I need a shorty. I need a short 10. I don't need a shorty. I have one of those already. Shotty. Whoa. And the way to check to see if the harness is all the way loose and you got all the brackets off, just kind of move that over the cat. Don't forget about that when you're putting it back in though. And then you'll be able to see that the harness is completely off, and now all we have left are bell housing bolts. Alright, so now go to your toolbox and get the longest extension, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of the longest extensions that you have. And we're going to send these guys up here. I always like to do the top one first, just because it is the most inconvenient one to get to. There's 2 actually. So I need another extension to put it on my impact. We're going to go right here. And they like to jump off when you got a long extension like this. So just make sure that it's all the way down. And that's loose like that. And then reach up here and grab that bolt. And then there's the vent tube. So we'll pull that vent tube down, just so it's back there, out of the way. Now we'll come to this side. Same thing. Go up there. Take it off. And then since we're right here, I'm going to do this one. And I'm going to leave this bottom left one on because it's the easiest one to get to. So you can kind of see that the trans loosened up a little bit right there. Oh, here. Remember how I was going to show you earlier the different sizes of the bolts? So the one that goes backwards that's above the starter is this one. And the one that goes in from the transmission side into the motor is this one. So you can tell that it's about a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch difference. And this is important because if you go to put this one in where this one goes, it's going to bottom out and it's not going to get tight. So make sure that you put the right one in there. All the rest of the 17s on the top of the bell housing, they're all the same size and length, so that doesn't matter. And now it is time to get this boy out of here. Just kind of do a once over always. I like to put that forward. And yeah, trans should come out. I'm going to go down with the lift, put some pressure on the jack. And some people will they'll actually strap the transmission down to their trans jack. I have these little sliding guides right here that kind of allow me to keep it somewhat stable. I wouldn't say super stable because it definitely moves a bit, but if you have just like a flat piece of whatever holding it on, just be careful. If you drop this, you can break the casting in the trans. So we're gonna go down to about right there. And if you're doing this on the ground, basically what you do is just you jack the jack up to where it makes it where you feel happy about it being. All right, so we got our last 17, and you can kind of tell why I decided to do this one. It's the easiest one to get to. And 9 times out of 10, the trans isn't just going to fall out. You're going to still have to pry it. But it's good to have some sort of support under there. Okay, so now that I have all the bolts are loose, I'm just going to kind of go under here and I'm going to see where it's loose. So I can see that it's loose on this side. And I want to come out with this even, because if we start binding up, it makes your life difficult. We'll drop this down just a tiny bit. Okay, so that's got some wiggle room there. Same thing, we'll just wiggle this off. And once it comes out of the dowel pins, I don't know if you can see it right there. See that dowel pin right there? Once it comes off those dowel pins, get ready because the trans is coming out. And there you go. That is how you remove a manual trans out of a DE 350Z.